I just finished an anniversary present pillow made with duplicate stitching and lace and the Lazy Daisy stitch. So this video is going to show you how to do the duplicate stitching and the Lazy Daisy stitch. This version of duplicate stitching is unique. I'm working on a duplicate stitching project, and I thought I would show you how I'm setting it up. This looks very brave, but I'll explain to you why it's not. The initials of the couple that this is for their 20th anniversary, are R and K. So there's the R. I'm following a couple general principles, which is that you really want 2 lines or columns of stitches involved wherever you can, because it makes a better defined letter. I've already done the 20. I'm going to try to space my K about like I did my R, but as with handwriting always, if it's a little bit eccentric, that's just how we are. It's not considered a disaster when you write a card, so there's no need to consider it a complete disaster doing duplicate stitch. I want these things about the same size as each other. I just went and compared. So I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. Now here's why I'm not near as brave as this appears. This is washable marker. If I hate it or fail to cover it all with the sensible stitching, I mean the logical columns to make the letters, and then use my judgment about what looks even and attractive is what I mean by sensible stitching. All I have to do is rinse this in water. It comes right out. This is what I'm using. This is a very old set of Pentel color markers. And they didn't say they were water washable, but a friend of mine suggested to me that most are, and she's right. So just check what you've got. Now, I'm going to widen that bottom of that R a little bit to match what I did to the K. I think that looks pretty. I'm just going to commence duplicate stitching and see where I get. Here we are. I've done the R, the K, and I'm working on the numbers now, and I thought we'd do a little bit together. A blunt-tipped yarn needle is essential. I work every stitch from back to front to back again. I'll show you what I mean. I'm coming up at the bottom of a stitch where what I call the legs of the V that the stitch is meet. You come up in that hole. You can go down to the right or down to the left. My habit is to go down to the right, following the stitch path, duplicating the right hand leg of the V. Come up at the top of the left hand leg and go down at the bottom of the V. Now, it's a lot quicker to start stitching the next stitch before you pull the last stitch through, but it's much harder to get it even. So until you are very experienced, I recommend doing just what I did now. Come up, go down. You can go across that in one piece. Now tighten it up, but just tight enough to take out the slack. Don't pull it snug. This is one of the ways you get good coverage. Now down. And again, tighten up just enough. And this will be my next spot. Trying to get this thing to focus for you. Come up. Through at the top of the legs. Tighten up. Now here's what I mean about doing 2 stitches sort of at once. If I went down here and up here, it would save a lot of time. See, though, my stitch doesn't look as nice. Now you can fix it. And you may get good at doing that and want to adopt that technique. But be aware there are hazards to it. So in addition to tightening up every stitch one at a time, even actually every half a stitch one at a time. There are some other tricks. Yarns that are a little fuzzy cover better than yarns that are not. The yarn I'm stitching with is not at all fuzzy, but it's covering well because I used an alternate thing. It's slightly heavier than the yarn it's covering. Work slowly. There is a huge temptation to use a really long piece of yarn because this takes an enormous amount of yarn and you don't feel like stopping and rethreading. Unfortunately, that is just begging for tangles and usually does not save time. In my opinion, the single most important thing is the business of tightening just enough and not too much. I pull it snug there, snug at this point, and snug at this point. Now I'm going to purposely tighten too much. See how that doesn't look as good as the other stitches? It is fixable if I realize at this point that my tension is not right. Tease it out with the point of the needle. Now it does look pretty good. It's much harder to fix if you wait till many stitches down the line. Now at present I am duplicate stitching on a standard gauge piece of fabric. But one of the nice things about this technique is it doesn't care what fabric or what the fabric source was or how bulky it is. You just do the same thing with appropriate yarn. I will say that on really bulky yarns, number 5 and 6 in the US, I don't like the effect as well because you already had a fabric that was bulky, and when you duplicate stitch or duplicate the stitches literally, you've got such a thick spot in the fabric. But for up to number 4 yarn, I'm very happy with it, or the results that I get from it. And one nice thing is that some designs just don't lend themselves either to Fair Isle or Intarsia very well. So duplicate stitching is the logical way to get around that, still get a design that looks knitted in, that says and does what you want it to. And let's see, one more thing I want you to know. As we've discussed that I'm following a markered pattern, water-soluble marker. And every time I make a stitch, I make a judgment call about is this exactly the right place to make it. This one was pretty obvious. It was green all over. But some of these off to the right, maybe half a stitch is going to be marked with my green marker. If I stitch one and then decide, nah, I wish I hadn't put one there, let's pretend that this next one is a mistake and I don't like it. Actually, I do like it, but here's what I would do. Oh, I hate that stitch. I pulled my yarn needle out. Now I can unstitch that stitch. Would also be true if I just stitched it wrong, somehow stitched down in the wrong place. You could unstitch it just like that and now rethread it and proceed. There's the finished duplicate stitching. And I decided to add a little embellishment to each corner. It'll be starting at that dot. And I'm using Lazy Daisy stitches. This is a classic embroidery stitch, and I'll show you how to get it to work on our knitting. I've knotted a small loop into one end of the yarn. And that is what I've discovered is critical to keeping things from coming through to the front of the fabric when you don't want them to. My knot caught there. A Lazy Daisy stitch works like this. We make a loop and we go back right where we came up the first time. And that's where this loop is needed. If I go through it, now I'll have a stable situation. Now here's the loop that's going to make the daisy petal. I pull it as tightly as I want it to be, to whatever size, and now make a stitch at the very end to secure it. And there it looks like a leaf or a flower petal when you do it. It's not meant to be a tight stitch. I'm going to do a smaller one in the center, up, down in the same place. Whoops, I need to get the yarn tail out of the way. So a little adjusting is needed. There we go. Now I decide where is the point supposed to be. One nice thing about this stitch is if you get it wrong, it's very easily undone and readjusted. I think I'm okay with that. But I see something I'm not okay with. Get that to focus for you better. That doesn't look good. Those two ends aren't close enough together. So let me back out. Come up again. Actually, I should pull all that out. You know I should. I'm trying to cheat. And it's not a good idea to do your cheating with the camera on, is it? All right, let's reload the needle. Up, down in the same place. Locate the terminal end of the loop. There we go. I like my end much better now, my first end I'm referring to. Up, down, and fasten this loop. I don't think this is quite symmetrical with the other set, and it doesn't really need to be. What I'll do is back off, take a look at it, and see if I like it or not. I need to loosen that last one. And I think the positioning is okay with me. I just need to loosen it. There we go. I felt some play arise. Now when I snug it down, it should be okay. Looks to me like I'm going to need to redo that one entirely. Somehow I have split the stitch. Ah, there it is. I really did. So let's pull it out. As I said, these are so easy that it's not a crisis if you have to redo them. Okay, one more try. Up the first time. Down through the same hole. Get that yarn tail out of the way. Deciding on where I want the end of the loop. Aha, I like the looks of this better. Down to anchor it. Now let's back off and have a look. Yes, I think I'm fine. I'll knot it and we'll go on. I'm finishing up neatening up the back, tying the ends and snipping them. And notice I'm not getting them too neat on purpose. I don't want any short ends that could possibly back out of their knots. And I'm using real knots. This face of the fabric is going to be against the lining. So all I need to do is avoid and so big and sloppy they would either come through or make a bump. I want these knots to stay nice and secure. The knitting police are never going to see them. They'll be hidden, and that is the most secure way.